Pete Hegseth's dumbass brother, Phil, wrote a memo last month for the Department of Defense, even though he works at the Department of Homeland Security, explaining to the Pentagon how they can start using U.S. military troops on U.S. soil to arrest U.S. citizens. And of course, as per usual with this Pentagon, this memo from Phil Hegseth was released to the public and probably should be one of the biggest stories in the country right now, but it seems like most people are just totally ignoring it. You know, the corporate media is not talking about this, but this is possibly the biggest threat to our country, to our freedoms, to our way of life that we have seen so far from this administration, and that's saying a lot. But this memo from Phil Hegseth lays out not only his plan to deploy troops in the U.S. right now, but for years to come. Let me read you this. The military is the most powerful coercive tool our country has. We don't want the military doing law enforcement. It absolutely undermines the rule of law. That's actually what one of the critics said from the German Marshall Fund, and they also called it disturbing and said that the intent to use the military within the United States is a level not seen since Japanese internment. Just to give you a little hint of how bad this actually is. Now, for the memo itself, Hegseth, Phil, again, his brother, who, by the way, before going to the Pentagon, was a podcast producer. Yeah, just a guy who did what I did for 21 years, suddenly gets a job at a Pentagon. He wasn't even a producer as long as I was. And now this podcast producer is saying, listen, I know what happened in LA with the deployment of the National Guard. He admits, like, that didn't go as well as we thought it would, but he now has a plan. We're going to release the National Guard and, if necessary, U.S. Army soldiers. And what they're going to do is they're actually going to help local law enforcement because, as Hegseth says, we've got to get rid of the terrorist organizations that pose a threat, the foreign gangs and the drug cartels. They're a threat similar to Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Really? Because the news and the statistics don't actually bear that out. He is using this false premise of, oh my God, you got drug dealers. It's like Al-Qaeda's right in our backyard. Yeah, the statistics don't show that. We're not actually having genuine terrorist attacks coming from these gangs or cartels. I'm not saying gangs and cartels are not a problem. Obviously they are, but it's not as big of a problem that these, fearmongers would have you believe. They want to use anything they can as an excuse to put boots on the ground in the United States and have these people start rounding up U.S. citizens. The memo also suggests that this ramping up of our military deployment is needed. It then says, everyone here is also aware of our joint work in LA. It hasn't been perfect, and we're still working through best practices together, but I think it's a good indicator of the type of operations and resistance we're going to be working through for years to come. Years to come, he says. They want troops on the ground, U.S. military troops on the ground in the United States to work with local law enforcement, by the way. That's what they said, local law enforcement. So we're not talking about ICE. They're not talking about going after the people in the country illegally like we did in L.A. This is to get people like you. This is to get people like me. And yeah, we're not committing crimes, are we? But we have seen far too many people, hundreds of them at this point, possibly thousands, with no criminal records, rounded up by this administration, including actual U.S. citizens. And we have seen protesters deported. We have seen people forced out of this country, forcibly disappeared by plainclothes officers off the street. Looks like they're being kidnapped for exercising their constitutional rights. The deployment of troops on our streets, in our cities, in our backyards, is not about keeping us safe. It's about squashing dissent. It is about you driving to work and seeing that military presence so you get that fear inside of you, so that you know if you step out of line, if you say something you shouldn't say, they are right there to take you in. That is what this is about. And this might very well be the biggest threat to our country that we have ever seen. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. We got fresh content every day for you. And if you want to follow us across social media, make sure you check out all of the social links that we have posted in the description of this video.